Imagine waking up to discover that the last 12 years of your life were just, well, a complete fabrication,
Oh, man.
right? Like the safe home you built, the lover you wake up next to every morning, even the child you've been raising. None of it is real.
It's just terrifying.
Yeah, it's just this flawless, glitch-free illusion. But here's the truly horrifying part. This illusion, it wasn't projected into your head by some villain. It was actually designed by your own mind to protect you.
Right, because the alternative was worse.
Exactly, because your actual physical body was being tortured inside a mechanized Iron Maiden.
Which just instantly forces us to confront the terrifying limits of human perception. I mean, we rely entirely on our senses to dictate our reality, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But in this scenario, your brain is actively lying to you. It is constructing this incredibly elaborate, deeply emotional fiction just to keep your consciousness from, completely fracturing under the weight of this unimaginable, unending physical agony.
And that deeply unsettling premise is exactly where we are starting today. Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are exploring the 2017 dark fantasy and sci-fi book, San Vitae, The Awakening by D.P. Kirk. Our mission for you today is to provide a custom reader's guide and a quality review, and we are focusing on the absolute turning point of this entire story.
Chapter 11.
Yes, Chapter 11, titled Catharsis. We are going to break down the mechanics of this world, the psychological horror at the center of it, and ultimately give you some really compelling reasons why this needs to be on your reading list.
So, to understand the weight of that catharsis, we have to look closely at the architecture of the trauma itself.
Right.
The protagonist, Kurien, he's waking up from this 12-year hallucination. We need to understand what he actually is. Kurien is a Sanite.
Okay, let's explain that real quick.
Yeah, so in the lore of this world, a Sanite is this awakened, immensely powerful being that utilizes a specific type of blood energy called vitae.
Right. But before we get into the explosive magic system stuff, we really have to talk about the mundanity of his illusion.
The everyday stuff.
Exactly. For over a decade in his mind, he lived this beautiful, relatively peaceful life. He's with his beloved Covenness, a woman named Myasuchi.
Yep.
And they are raising a son together, named Han. And it wasn't, some hazy dream sequence. He lived the quiet dinners, the minor arguments, the distinct feeling of his son hugging him.
The mundanity is what makes the betrayal so absolute, honestly.
Yeah.
The brain didn't just invent a blank white room. It simulated a full emotional spectrum.
I was actually trying to wrap my head around how to visualize this. Initially, I thought about it like a VR simulation.
Sure, like a video game.
Yeah, but that doesn't quite capture the biological necessity of it. So think of it more like a computer's operating system.
Okay, I follow.
When a vicious malware attacks the main drive, the system doesn't just shut off. It partitions the drive. It launches a safe mode,
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. A highly limited, isolated environment to keep the core processor from burning out while the rest of the machine is just being ravaged. Kurien's brain did exactly that.
It did.
It partitioned a 12-year safe mode simulation just to keep his consciousness from frying under the pain.
That is a much more accurate way to look at it, especially when you factor in the physical reality outside that partition.
Which is grim.
Extremely grim. While Kurien was, reading bedtime stories to a son that didn't even exist, his actual body was locked away in an Inquisitor vault.
Yeah.
And this vault isn't just a dungeon. It's a highly sophisticated laboratory run jointly by two opposing factions, the Santerrie and the Humanis.
Which introduces a massive amount of technical jargon early on, so let's break that down for the listener.
Good idea.
You have the Santerrie, who are essentially a faction that embraces and utilizes this vitae energy, right?
All right.
And then the Humanis, who are pure-blood humans, entirely rejecting it on an ideological level.
Exactly. They are engaged in this bitter ideological war over the remnants of this post-cataclysmic world, yet they have colluded to run this specific Inquisitor vault.
Which is super suspicious.
Totally. And why? Because Kurien possesses something exceedingly rare.
Yeah.
Pitch pure vitae. Right? They aren't just torturing him for information. They're using him as a biological battery. They are systematically draining his highly concentrated pure energy to study it, weaponize it, or, perhaps synthesize it.
Which brings us to the exact moment the operating system finally crashes.
The awakening.
Yes. The safe mode partition collapses, and Kurien is violently thrust back into reality. This triggers the events of Chapter 11, Catharsis. And the contrast is just jarring.
It's brutal.
He wakes up fully encapsulated in a mechanized Iron Maiden.
And we should clarify the mechanics of this Iron Maiden, because it isn't an archaic medieval torture device just meant to puncture the skin.
No, it's way worse.
It's a mechanized extraction engine. It's lined with pulsating needles that are actively seeking out his veins, like physically siphoning the pitch pure vitae straight from his circulatory system.
The visual on that is so gross.
It is. The physical violation is continuous and entirely automated.
And the moment of realization is masterfully paced. He doesn't just wake up and instantly know what happened.
Right, he's disoriented.
Yeah, he manages to adjust his vision in this sterile room, and he spots a Sanite subject's logbook. He sees his own name.
And the date.
And then he sees his admission date. It was exactly 12 years ago. That is the exact second the math hits him.
Oh, that part.
The realization that his son, Han, never took a single breath.
The psychological whiplash of mourning a 12-year-old child who only existed as a neurological defense mechanism, I mean, it is staggering.
I can't even imagine.
The grief is so absolute, so dense, that it literally cannot be contained by his physical body.
Which leads to the catastrophic reaction. His pitch-pure Vitae literally consumes the mechanized Iron Maiden.
Just eats it.
Yeah, the metal is obliterated, the energy breaks free and begins hovering around him as a, wait, let me find the quote, chattering swarm of the deepest malice.
What a line.
He levels the entire room, leaving a 20-meter spherical depression in the solid concrete floor.
Notice how the author is defining the magic system here, too? Vitae isn't just a utilitarian tool. It isn't a spell you cast by reciting a Latin phrase or whatever. It is a psychically reactive circulatory fluid.
It's biological.
Exactly. It is intimately tied to his nervous system and his emotional state. So when extracted under those conditions, the energy itself becomes tainted by his trauma.
That makes a lot of sense.
That chattering swarm isn't just dark magic. It is his externalized, weaponized grief. It consumes matter because his grief is all-consuming.
Now, looking at this scene, it would be super easy to write this as a classic hero's power-up moment.
Oh, for sure. The typical anime trope.
Yeah. You know, the hero gets pushed too far, glows with righteous energy, blows up the lab, and walks out to seek justice. But that isn't what happens.
Not at all.
Kurien looks at his reflection, and he sees this soulless malice and cold indifference. And he actively embraces a deeply sinister part of himself. He decides he needs this monster.
I would actually push back slightly on the word embraces, if I can.
Oh, okay. Tell me why.
I don't think Kurien wants this.
Yeah.
I think it's more accurate to say he surrenders to it out of terrifying necessity.
Interesting.
It's a subtle difference, right? Between wanting to be a monster and recognizing that a monster is the only tool left in the toolbox. This chapter is the literal death of his innocence.
Okay, that's a very fair distinction. He makes a calculated, horrifying psychological bargain.
Precisely. The man who could gently love Myasuchi, the man who could be a patient father, that man is fundamentally incapable of surviving an Inquisitor vault.
He'd be crushed.
Exactly. So he intentionally allows a demon to take the wheel. He surrenders to that cold, indifferent monster because he calculates it is the only entity vicious enough to carve a path out of that vault so he can find the real Myasuchi.
Wow. But conveying that level of psychological horror requires a very specific linguistic toolkit.
It does.
You can't describe a fractured mind using sterile, neat sentences, which explains why D.P. Kirk leans into such overwhelming sensory language in this chapter.
Yeah, let's talk about the writing style.
Let's dig into the prose quality here, because it is distinctly stylized and dense.
The author relies heavily on juxtaposition. You have the clinical, highly controlled sci-fi environment, like the sterile gray stone walls, being violently interrupted by the hyper-supernatural chattering swarm of black vitae.
The imagery is incredibly striking.
Yeah.
Like, after the explosion, Kurien is standing in the center of this massive 20-meter crater.
Yeah.
And the only light in the room is a single, unbroken light bar dangling by a frayed wire over the destruction, just sparking in the dark.
Very cinematic.
It really is cinematic, but the prose itself is unapologetically melodramatic. Kirk uses incredibly rich, specific color descriptors. We aren't just seeing red or purple.
No, we're seeing amaranthine.
Exactly. Amaranthine, lavender, and sanguinette describing the visual manifestations of the auras.
Which is a bold stylistic choice. When a reader encounters words like amaranthine and sanguinette in the middle of a high-octane escape sequence, it runs the risk of slowing the pacing to a crawl.
I thought the exact same thing. Initially, I thought it might be a bit too purple, but as I read closely, I realized This isn't just stylistic flair, it's actually a structural necessity.
Oh, so.
The prose has to feel chaotic and overwhelming because the magic itself is chaotic. If the author just wrote, "He shot a blast of dark energy and broke the wall," it would reduce a profound psychological shattering into a standard comic book panel.
Oh, that is spot on. By using this dense, visceral, sometimes overwhelming descriptive language, the author grounds the abstract magic in raw physical reality.
Yes, exactly.
The prose forces you to feel Kurien's sensory overload. You are experiencing his psychological fracturing right alongside him. The language is thick and hard to process because the trauma he is experiencing is thick and hard to process.
It definitely prevents the scene from feeling like a clinical recounting of facts. You really feel the heat, the color, the sheer malice of the moment.
You really do.
And you can't have a fractured mind like that without a world designed to break it, which forces us to look at the fallout of this catharsis.
The consequence.
Chapter 11 is the spark, but the consequences of Kurien's bargain fuel the rest of the book's narrative.
Because the bill always comes due, right?
Yeah.
The cold malice he invited in to survive,
Yeah.
it doesn't politely pack its bags and leave once he escapes the vault.
No. It sets up a permanent camp in his brain.
Yeah, it does.
So he escapes into the post-apocalyptic ruins of a city called Roanth. And out there in the wasteland, he encounters another tortured Sanite named Sharina. Her body is completely emaciated. Kurien uses his abilities to heal her, and in the process, they form a blood bond. But let's clarify the mechanics of this because it's not just a metaphorical bond of friendship.
No, a blood bond in this lore is a profound physiological and magical linking.
Like a literal connection.
Yes. When a Sanite uses their vitae to heal another, they aren't just stitching wounds closed. They are essentially rewriting the other person's cellular structure with their own emotionally charged energy.
Wow.
It physically links their nervous systems and their vitae currents. They are fundamentally entangled.
Which would normally be this beautiful moment of connection. But it's immediately complicated by the massive psychological baggage Kurien is carrying.
Because of the demon.
That demon he surrendered to in the vault. It manifests as a completely separate, terrifying persona within his mind that calls itself Lotus.
And Lotus is a masterclass in psychological horror writing, honestly.
Yeah.
The persona isn't just a generic evil voice.
No, it's way more messed up.
It seems to contain the fragmented memories of Myasuchi, his deeply loved Covenness, and her twisted, sinister twin sister, Rikuko.
It's an amalgamation of his deepest desires and his absolutely darkest fears sharing the exact same space in his head.
It's chilling.
And Lotus doesn't just offer menacing commentary. This internal demon constantly fights Kurien for physical control of his central nervous system.
Which drastically changes the stakes of the blood bond with Sharina.
Oh, completely.
Because Kurien is now intimately linked to someone he cares about, but he doesn't have full control of his own body.
There is a sequence where Lotus actually wins the internal struggle, takes over, and uses Kurien's own bladed claws to attack and torture Sharina.
It's so hard to read.
And it happens completely against Kurien's conscious will. He is essentially trapped behind his own eyes, watching his own hands mutilate someone he is blood bonded to.
It transforms the narrative entirely.
Yeah.
The primary enemy isn't the Humanities Inquisitors anymore.
Right.
The enemy is the very coping mechanism he created to survive them. It asks a brutal question, you know?
Right.
How do you defeat the villain when the villain is the armor keeping you alive?
That is exactly it. And if I'm pitching this to you, the listener, here's exactly why you need to pick up San Vitae: The Awakening.
It's so good.
On the surface, it's a gritty, dark, fantasy survival story. You've got Kurien fighting through the ruins against New Covenant soldiers. You have these monstrous, mutated creatures called anti-sans roaming the wastes, and these terrifying figures known as puppeteers.
Classic post-apocalyptic threats.
Yeah, exactly. But all of that external action is just the wrapper. The core of the book is a psychological horror story, where the main villain lives inside the protagonist's own head.
Furthermore, the broader world building supports that theme of hidden dangers perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
We mentioned the fashion politics between the Santerrie and the pureblood humanities. But looming over all of this petty human squabbling is the mythic threat of the Vitae.
Right. The Vitae. They are essentially these ancient, godlike Samites who supposedly survived the original cataclysm that broke the world.
Yeah.
They are referenced almost like boogeymen throughout the text.
They create this overarching dread. The reader, much like Kurien himself, is constantly forced to question the scale of the reality they are in.
Always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
You think the Inquisitors are the apex predators until you learn about the Santi Vitae? The lore is incredibly dense, but Kirk never dumps it on you in a textbook format.
Thank goodness.
It's always doled out through the visceral, painful experiences of the characters, making the world feel incredibly dangerous and lived in.
It's a dark, unapologetic setting. Power in this universe doesn't come from a magical artifact or a chosen one prophecy.
No.
It comes with a devastating, often irreversible psychological price tag. And Chapter 11, Catharsis, is the absolute masterclass turning point where we watch the protagonist pay that toll in real time. We see the exact moment his humanity is amputated.
And we spend the rest of the novel watching the monstrous limb that grows back in its place.
Man, exactly. So as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a completely different thought to ponder as you go about your day.
Lay it on us.
We spent a lot of time discussing how trauma forces humanity to adapt, how Kurien had to surrender to a monster just to survive the vault.
Right.
But if we pull back and look at the lore of the Santi Vitae, these ancient godlike beings who survived the original world-breaking cataclysm, it raises a terrifying question about the trajectory of life in this universe.
Okay.
And surviving unimaginable trauma inherently requires you to amputate your humanity and invite in a monster? Then what does that say about the Santi Vitae? Are they truly gods? Or does human evolution in a broken world eventually just become a race to see who can become the most efficient, soulless monster?